My daughter was accused of malpractice at school until the principal realizes her IQ matched my billionaire CO ex-husband's child. Your daughter didn't solve this problem, Ms. Winters. She hacked our secure server and stole classified property from George Industries. Isolde Winters' heart stopped. Beside her, 7-year-old Aloan sat perfectly still, calm, fearless, already carrying a secret that could destroy everything her mother had built. I didn't steal anything, Aloan said quietly. The algorithm was flawed. I fixed it. Then the door swung open, and the past walked in. Cashin George, billionaire, genius. The man whose child Isolde had hidden for 7 years. His eyes found Aloan first, then Isolde. And in that devastating silence, 7 years of secrets came crashing down. The Weatherton Academy for Exceptional Children was not a place that tolerated imperfection. Its marble hallways whispered of legacy and old money. Its classrooms groomed future senators, CEOs, and Nobel laureates. And its disciplinary hearings were conducted with the cold precision of a courtroom trial. Isolde had never belonged in places like this. She had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment where the heating worked only half the time and scholarships were the only bridge between dreams and reality. But she had clawed her way into the world of scientific research, earned her doctorate, and built a quiet life for herself and her daughter in a small townhouse on the outskirts of the city. Aloan had earned her place at Weatherton through sheer brilliance. A full scholarship, top of every class. The kind of child that teachers either adored or feared, because her questions often exposed the limits of their own knowledge. But now that brilliance had become a weapon pointed directly at them. Principal Hargrove was a thin woman with silver hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch the patience right out of her face. She sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Isolde's car, flanked by 2 school board members and a man in an expensive suit who had introduced himself as the Academy's legal counsel. The document in front of them was a printout of code. Hundreds of lines. Complex, beautiful, and according to them, stolen. Ms. Winters, Principal Hargrove continued, her voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. This algorithm is proprietary technology developed by George Industries. It was stored on a secure server as part of our partnership with the George Foundation. Your daughter somehow accessed that server and submitted this code as her own work for the Advanced Mathematics Showcase. Isolde's mouth went dry. There has to be a mistake. Aloan is 7 years old. She doesn't know how to hack anything. Then how do you explain this? The legal counsel slid another document across the table. The access logs show the breach originated from your daughter's school-issued tablet. At 2:47 a.m. last Tuesday, Isolde turned to her daughter. Aloan sat with her hands folded in her lap, her dark hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She looked impossibly small in the leather chair, but her eyes held a steadiness that most adults could not muster under pressure. Aloan, Isolde said softly, did you do this? The girl met her mother's gaze without flinching. I accessed the server, but I didn't steal anything. The algorithm they uploaded was broken. It had an error in the 4th sequence that would cause a cascade failure in any real-world application. I fixed it. Then I submitted my version for the showcase because I wanted to show how it could actually work. Silence. Principal Hargrove's left eye twitched. The legal counsel leaned forward. You're telling us that a 7-year-old not only breached a military-grade encryption system, but also corrected a flaw that our entire team of engineers missed. Aloan blinked. Yes. Is that not what I just said? Isolde closed her eyes. This was exactly the kind of thing that happened when your daughter inherited her father's brain and your stubbornness. Before anyone could respond, the door to the office swung open. A man stepped inside. Tall, dark hair silvered at the temples. A jawline that could cut glass and eyes the color of a winter storm. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's yearly salary, and he moved with the quiet authority of someone who had never been told no in his life. Cashin George, founder and CEO of George Industries, tech visionary, philanthropist, and the man who had once held Isolde's heart in his hands before crushing it completely. Isolde felt the blood drain from her face. My apologies for the delay, Cashin said, his voice smooth and controlled. I came as soon as I was informed about the breach. He stopped mid-stride. His gaze had fallen on Aloan. The girl looked up at him with open curiosity, completely unaware that she was staring at her own reflection cast forward by 30 years. The same dark hair, the same storm gray eyes, the same slight furrow between the brows when processing new information. Cashin's expression flickered, just for a moment. a crack in the armor that only Isolde would have recognized. Then his eyes moved to her, and the temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. Isolde. Her name on his lips was a ghost. A haunting. A wound that had never fully healed. Cashin. Principal Hargrove looked between them with obvious confusion. You two know each other? Neither of them answered. Cashin walked slowly toward the desk, but his attention kept drifting back to Aloan. The girl watched him with the same analytical intensity she applied to complex equations. You're Cashin, George, Aloan said matter-of-factly. You invented the neural processing framework that revolutionized artificial intelligence. Your TED Talk on emergent machine learning has 47 million views. And your algorithm is still broken, by the way. If the situation had been any less catastrophic, Isolde might have laughed. Cashin's jaw tightened. Is that so? Yes. The error is in the recursive loop. It doesn't account for variable entropy in real-time data streams. My version does. Cashin stared at the child for a long moment. Then he turned to Principal Hargrove. I want to see her test scores. Mr. George, this is a disciplinary hearing. The child has committed a serious. Her test scores. Now. The principal hesitated, then nodded to one of the board members, who quickly pulled up Aloan's academic file on a tablet. Cashin took the device and scrolled through the information. His face remained impassive, but Isolde watched his fingers tighten around the edges of the screen. She tested out of the standard curriculum in 3 months, he read aloud. Perfect scores in mathematics, physics, and computer science. Reading level of a college sophomore. And an IQ of... He paused. 180. The room went silent. 180. The same number that had made Cashin George famous. The same number that appeared in every profile and interview about him. The marker of a once-in-a-generation mind. Cashin lowered the tablet slowly. His eyes locked onto Isolde's with an intensity that made her want to disappear through the floor. How old is she? Isolde's throat constricted. 7. When is her birthday? Cashin. When is her birthday? March 14th. Something shifted in his expression. March 14th. 9 months after the last night they had spent together. The night before his family had torn them apart. Cashin set the tablet down with deliberate care. Then he turned to the principal and the legal counsel. Leave us. Principal Hargrove straightened indignantly. Mr. George, this is highly irregular. We have protocols. I am the primary donor to this institution. My foundation funds 70% of your scholarship program. Leave. Now. There was no room for negotiation in his voice. The principal gathered her dignity and her colleagues and swept out of the room. The door clicked shut behind them. And then there were 3. Aloan looked between the 2 adults with growing interest. You know my mother. And you keep looking at me like I'm a math problem you can't solve. Are you my father? Isolde's heart shattered. Cashin went absolutely still. Aloan, Isolde whispered. Sweetie, this isn't. It's a logical deduction, Aloan interrupted calmly. I don't look like anyone on your side of the family. You've never talked about my father. And this man has the same eye color, hair texture, and cognitive markers as me. Also, you both look like you've seen a ghost. So am I correct? Cashin turned to Isolde. The storm in his eyes had become a hurricane. Is it true? Isolde felt 7 years of secrets pressing against her chest. 7 years of sleepless nights. 7 years of protecting her daughter from a world that would have devoured her. Yes. The word fell like a bomb. Cashin's hands curled into fists at his sides. You kept my child from me. For 7 years. I kept her safe. Safe? Safe from what? From her own father? From your family. Isolde's voice cracked. From your mother and her lawyers and her threats. From a world that would have turned her into a commodity. A chess piece. A bargaining chip for your next billion-dollar merger. Cashin stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You had no right. I had every right. You let them drive me away, Cashin. You stood there and let your mother destroy everything we had. You chose your empire over me. So yes, I ran. And I built a life for my daughter that didn't require your permission or your money or your name. Our daughter. The words hung between them like a blade. Aloan watched the exchange with wide eyes. For the first time since entering the principal's office, she looked her age. Small, confused. Caught between 2 worlds that were colliding without her consent. Mom. Her voice trembled slightly. What's happening? Isolde knelt down in front of her daughter, taking her small hands in her own. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have told you. I should have explained. But I was trying to protect you. From him. Aloan glanced at Cashin. He doesn't seem dangerous. Just angry. Cashin's expression softened almost imperceptibly as he looked at the child. I'm not angry at you, but you're angry at my mother. Because she didn't tell you about me. Yes. Aloan considered this for a moment. That seems fair. But also, you should probably hear her side of the story before you decide to stay angry. That's what we do in debate club. Hear both sides. Then form a conclusion. Despite everything, the corner of Cashin's mouth twitched. You're in debate club? I started it. The school didn't have one. I also started the coding club and the advanced chemistry collective. The other kids think I'm weird, but I prefer the term intellectually divergent. Cashin stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something Isolde had never seen him do in all the years she had known him. He laughed. It was quiet, almost surprised, as if the sound had escaped without his permission. But it was real. You're definitely my daughter, he murmured. Aloan tilted her head. Was that ever in question? The genetic markers are fairly obvious. Isolde stood up, her legs unsteady. Cashin, we need to talk. But not here. Not like this. He met her eyes. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but something else had joined it. Something that looked almost like grief. You're right. Not here. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. My private office. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Bring Aloan. I have school tomorrow, Aloan pointed out. You're currently being accused of hacking a billion-dollar company, Cashin replied dryly. I think they'll grant you a day off. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Isolde. She looked at him. I'm not going to let you disappear again. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a promise. It was something in between. A statement of fact from a man who had built an empire on sheer will. Then he was gone. Aloan tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, are we in trouble? Isolde looked down at her daughter. Her brilliant, impossible, beautiful daughter who had just upended their entire existence by being too smart for her own good. I don't know, sweetheart, but we're going to figure it out. Together. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. You're going to want to see what happens next. The drive home was silent. Aloan sat in the passenger seat with her tablet on her lap, but for once she wasn't reading or coding or solving problems. She was staring out the window at the passing streetlights, her reflection a ghost in the glass. Isolde gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. Her mind was racing faster than the car, replaying every moment of the last hour. Cashin's face when he first saw Aloan, the way his voice had cracked on the word daughter, the cold fury in his eyes when he realized what she had kept from him. She had known this day would come. She had prepared for it in 1,000 different ways. Rehearsed speeches, drafted letters she never sent, imagined confrontations that ended in screaming or silence or something in between. But nothing had prepared her for the reality of it. For seeing Cashin again after all these years and feeling every carefully constructed wall crumble to dust. Mom. Isolde blinked. Yes, sweetheart. Why did you keep me a secret? The question was soft, genuine, without accusation, but it cut deeper than any blade. Isolde pulled the car into their driveway and turned off the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the small townhouse that had been their sanctuary for 7 years. The porch light was on. The garden she had planted with Aloan last spring was still blooming despite the autumn chill. It looked so fragile now, so temporary. It's complicated, Isolde finally said. I'm 7. Not stupid. Isolde turned to face her daughter. Those storm gray eyes. Cashin's eyes. Looking at her with a patience and intelligence that no child should possess. When I met your father, Isolde began slowly. I was a graduate student, a researcher. I had nothing but my brain and my dreams. And he was, everything, brilliant, ambitious. The kind of man who could walk into a room and make everyone else disappear. I fell in love with him before I even knew what was happening. Aloan listened without interrupting. We got married in secret. Your father's family is very powerful, very wealthy. And they had very specific plans for who he should be with. I was not part of those plans. His mother? Isolde nodded. Cordelia George. She found out about us. And she made it very clear that I was not welcome in her world. She said I was a distraction, a mistake, that I would ruin her son's legacy. What did she do? Isolde's jaw tightened. She gave me a choice. Walk away and disappear, or she would destroy me. Destroy my career. Destroy any chance I had at a future. And she was powerful enough to do it. What about my father? Didn't he stop her? The question pierced straight through Isolde's heart. He didn't know. Not at first. His mother made the threats when he wasn't there. And when I tried to tell him, He was already so deep in his company, in his obligations, in the world she had built for him. I don't think he knew how to choose me. Or maybe he didn't want to. I never found out which one it was. I just knew I couldn't stay. Aloan processed this for a long moment. And you found out you were pregnant after you left. Yes, a month later. By then, I had already disappeared. I had a new name, a new job, a new life. And I was terrified that if I told him, his mother would find us, would take you away from me, would turn you into something you weren't meant to be. A chess piece. Isolde felt tears prick at her eyes. Yes, exactly. Aloan reached over and placed her small hand on her mother's arm. I understand. I don't think you made the wrong choice. You don't. You were protecting me. That's what mothers do. But Aloan hesitated. I think I'd like to know him. My father, if he's not as bad as his mother. Isolde let out a shaky breath. I think I'd like that too. I just don't know if it's possible. Why not? Because Cordelia George is still alive. Because Cashin's world will swallow us whole. Because I'm not sure I can survive having my heart broken by him again. But she didn't say any of that. Let's just take it one day at a time, okay? Aloan nodded slowly. Okay. But Mom. Yes. I'm still in trouble for the hacking thing, aren't I? Isolde almost laughed. Oh, absolutely. We'll discuss your punishment after we survive tomorrow. The George Industries headquarters was a tower of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the clouds. It stood in the heart of the financial district like a monument to ambition, its facade reflecting the sun in a way that made it almost painful to look at. Isolde stood on the sidewalk outside, holding Aloan's hand and trying to remember how to breathe. It's really tall, Aloan observed. Yes, it is. Compensating for something? Aloan. I'm just making observations. They entered through the main lobby, which was all white marble and abstract art, and security guards who looked like they could bench press a small car. A receptionist directed them to a private elevator that required a keycard and a retinal scan. Retinal scan, Aloan said approvingly. Good security protocol. The elevator whisked them up 67 floors in complete silence. When the doors opened, they stepped into a space that looked more like a penthouse than an office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white. A massive desk in the center of the room, behind which sat Cashin George. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman Isolde didn't recognize. Tall, blonde, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Isolde's annual salary. She had the kind of beauty that came from expensive treatments and careful maintenance, and she was looking at Isolde with barely concealed hostility. You must be the ex, the woman said coolly. I'm Vivian Marchand, Cashin's fiancée. The word hit Isolde like a physical blow. Fiancé. Of course. Of course he had moved on. Of course he had found someone else. Someone polished and perfect and appropriate. Someone his mother would approve of. Vivian. Cashin's voice was a warning. I asked you to give us privacy. And I decided I wanted to meet the woman who's been hiding your child for 7 years. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. I think I have a right to know what we're dealing with. Aloan stepped forward, studying the woman with open curiosity. You're wearing Chanel No. 5 original formula. And your engagement ring is 4.2 carats, princess cut, with a clarity grade of VVS1. Very expensive, very flashy. Also, your smile is fake. The muscles around your eyes aren't engaging, which means you're not actually happy. You're performing happiness. Vivian's smile vanished. Excuse me. I'm just making observations, Aloan said innocently. Cashin coughed. It might have been covering a laugh. Vivian, leave. Now. The blonde woman shot one more venomous look at Isolde before stalking toward the elevator. The doors closed behind her with a decisive click. Cashin stood from his desk and walked toward them. Today he was dressed more casually. Dark slacks and a gray sweater that made his eyes look even more intense. He looked like he hadn't slept, and for a moment, Isolde felt an unexpected pang of concern. I'm sorry about her, he said quietly. She wasn't supposed to be here. Your fiancée seems lovely, Isolde replied flatly. The engagement was my mother's idea. A merger between families. It's not what you think. I don't think anything, Cashin. Your life is none of my business. He flinched slightly at that. Then his gaze dropped to Aloan, and his expression softened. Hello, Aloan. How are you today? I'm processing a significant amount of new information, Aloan replied honestly. But I'm functioning within acceptable parameters. Cashin's lips twitched. Good, that's good. He gestured toward a seating area by the windows. Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss. They settled into the plush chairs. Aloan immediately pulled out her tablet and began taking notes, which made Cashin raise an eyebrow. She documents everything, Isolde explained. It helps her process. Smart. She gets it from you. Cashin met her eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of 7 years hung between them like a physical presence. I need to know everything, Cashin finally said. From the beginning. Why you left. Why you hit her. Everything. Isolde took a deep breath. This was the conversation she had been dreading since the moment she walked out of his life. But there was no avoiding it now. It started with your mother, she began. And then she told him. Everything. The threats, the intimidation, the documents Cordelia had shown her, proving she could destroy Isolde's career with a single phone call. The choice she had been given. Disappear quietly or be crushed publicly. She told him about the fear, the loneliness, the moment she discovered she was pregnant and realized she was completely alone in the world. She told him about building a new identity, finding a job at a small research firm, working her way back up from nothing while raising a child who started reading at 2 and solving algebra at 4. She told him about the sleepless nights when Aloan would ask about her father, and Isolde would have to invent stories because the truth was too complicated, too painful, too dangerous. By the time she finished, her voice was hoarse and her cheeks were wet with tears she hadn't felt falling. Cashin sat in absolute silence. His face was unreadable, but his hands were gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. She told me you left, he said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. My mother. She told me you realized you didn't belong in my world, that you took money and disappeared, that you never loved me. Isolde felt like she had been stabbed. I never took anything from her. I refused every cent she offered, and I loved you more than I knew how to say. That's why leaving destroyed me. Cashin closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with something that might have been tears. I looked for you. For 2 years. I hired investigators. Searched every database I could access. But you had disappeared so completely, it was like you had never existed. Eventually, I convinced myself that my mother was right, that you had never really loved me, that I had been a fool. Cashin, I should have tried harder. His voice cracked. I should have seen through her lies. I should have protected you. You didn't know. I should have known. He stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to them. I let my own mother destroy my family because I was too blind and too weak to see what she was doing. Aloan looked up from her tablet. You're experiencing guilt, anger, and grief simultaneously. That's a complex emotional state. You should probably breathe. Despite everything, Cashin let out a short laugh. You're right. I should probably breathe. He turned back to face them. Aloan, I know this is a lot to take in. I know I'm a stranger to you. But I want you to know that I never would have abandoned you. If I had known you existed, I would have moved heaven and earth to be in your life. Aloan considered this carefully. I believe you. Your physiological responses suggest you're being truthful. Dilated pupils, elevated heart rate visible in the carotid artery. Micro-expressions consistent with genuine emotion. Cashin blinked. You can read all that. I can read most things. He shook his head slowly. You really are remarkable. I know. There was no arrogance in her voice. Just fact. But I have a question. Anything. What happens now? Do you want to be my father? Because that's a significant commitment, and I want to make sure you've thought it through logically. Cashin walked over and knelt down in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. I've thought about nothing else since I walked out of that principal's office. And yes, I want to be your father, if you'll have me. Aloan studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, but I have conditions. Conditions? First, you have to apologize to my mother. What happened wasn't entirely your fault, but you were still part of a system that hurt her. An apology would be appropriate. Cashin glanced at Isolde. She's right. I'm sorry, Isolde. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to protect you. I'm sorry I believed lies instead of trusting what we had. I'm sorry for every day you had to carry this burden alone. Isolde felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been locked tight for 7 years beginning to loosen. Thank you, she whispered. Second condition, Aloan continued. You have to deal with your mother. I've read about Cordelia George. She's a documented narcissist with a history of manipulative behavior. She's a threat to our family unit, and she needs to be neutralized. Cashin's expression hardened. Believe me, that's already at the top of my list. Good. Third condition. Aloan paused. I want a proper laboratory. My current workspace is inadequate for the experiments I'm planning. This time, Cashin actually smiled. I think that can be arranged. Then we have a deal. Aloan extended her small hand. Cashin took it and shook it solemnly. We have a deal. This is where things start to get really intense. If you're still with me, drop a comment below and let me know what you think Cordelia is going to do when she finds out about Aloan. And make sure you've liked this video because what is going to happen next is going to change everything. The news of Aloan's existence spread through the George Empire like wildfire. Within 48 hours, every business publication, gossip blog, and news outlet was running the story. Billionaire CEO discovers secret daughter. Hidden heir to the George fortune. Genius child could reshape tech dynasty. The headlines were sensational. The speculation was endless. And somewhere in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Cordelia George was plotting her next move. Isolde knew this because 3 days after the meeting in Cashin's office, she received a visit. It was early evening. Aloan was upstairs working on her homework, which today consisted of quantum physics equations she had requested just to challenge herself. Isolde was in the kitchen making dinner when the doorbell rang. She opened the door and felt her blood run cold. Cordelia George stood on her porch. The woman was in her late 60s but looked a decade younger, thanks to the best doctor's money could buy. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon. Her suit was Armani. Her smile was the kind that preceded declarations of war. Isolde, it's been such a long time. Isolde's hand tightened on the doorframe. What are you doing here? I came to talk. Mother to mother. Cordelia's eyes flickered past Isolde into the house. May I come in? Every instinct screamed at Isolde to slam the door in this woman's face. But she knew that would only delay the inevitable. Cordelia George was not the kind of person who gave up easily. 5 minutes. She stepped aside, and Cordelia glided into the house. Her gaze swept over the modest living room with barely concealed disdain. The second-hand furniture, the overflowing bookshelves, the photographs of Aloan at various ages covering every available surface. Charming, Cordelia said, making the word sound like an insult. What do you want, Cordelia? The older woman turned to face her. I want what I've always wanted. To protect my family. To protect my son. From threats that would destabilize everything we've built. I'm not a threat to anyone. Oh, but you are. You and that child. Cordelia's smile sharpened. You were supposed to stay gone, Isolde. That was the arrangement. You took my offer of silence and disappeared. But now you've resurfaced, and you've brought a complication with you. A complication? She's your granddaughter. She's leverage. And I don't allow leverage to exist outside my control. Isolde felt rage building in her chest. She's a child, a 7-year-old girl, not a business asset. Everything is a business asset to someone. The question is who controls it. Cordelia reached into her bag and withdrew a slim folder. I'm prepared to offer you the same deal I offered 7 years ago. A generous settlement, more than generous. Enough to set you and the girl up for life. In exchange, you disappear again. You change your names. You never contact my son again. And you never speak to the press about any of this. Isolde stared at the folder like it was a venomous snake. You're trying to buy my daughter. I'm trying to protect my family. Cashin is about to close the biggest merger in our company's history. His marriage to Vivian Marchand will unite 2 corporate dynasties. But now there are whispers, questions. His board is nervous. His investors are uncertain. All because of a child who should never have existed. The words hit Isolde like a slap. Get out of my house. Cordelia's smile didn't waver. I had hoped you would be reasonable. But I can see that hasn't changed. She set the folder on the coffee table. Take some time. Think about what I'm offering. Because if you don't take this deal, I will be forced to pursue other options. Legal options, custody challenges, investigations into your fitness as a mother. I have resources you cannot begin to imagine, and I will use every single one of them to protect what's mine. Aloan is not yours. She has George blood. That makes her my business. Cordelia moved toward the door. You have 1 week. After that, the gloves come off. She was gone before Isolde could respond. Isolde stood in the middle of her living room, shaking with fury and fear. The folder sat on the table like a bomb waiting to explode. Mom. She spun around. Aloan was standing at the bottom of the stairs, her tablet clutched to her chest. Her face was pale. Sweetheart, how long were you standing there? Long enough. Aloan walked over and picked up the folder. She flipped through the documents inside. Legal forms, non-disclosure agreements. A check with more zeros than Isolde had ever seen in her life. She's trying to make us disappear. I won't let that happen. She seems very determined. So am I. Aloan looked up at her mother. For a moment, She looked every bit the frightened child she rarely allowed herself to be. What do we do? Isolde knelt down and pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. We fight. We fight with everything we have. And we don't let anyone, not even a woman like Cordelia George, take away what we've built. Eloan nodded against her shoulder. Okay, but we're going to need help. I know. We should call him. My father. Isolde closed her eyes. She had spent 7 years running from Cash and George, hiding from him, convincing herself that she didn't need him. But her daughter was right. This wasn't a battle she could fight alone. Okay, she whispered. Let's call him. The phone call was brief. Isolde told Cashin about his mother's visit, about the threats, about the folders still sitting on her coffee table. She expected anger, outrage, maybe even denial. What she got was silence. Then, very quietly, don't sign anything. Don't respond to her. I'm coming over. He arrived within the hour. Isolde barely had time to process that Cashin George was standing in her living room, looking at the family photos on her walls, touching the books on her shelves. It felt surreal, like two different worlds colliding in ways they were never meant to. Eloan bounded down the stairs as soon as she heard the door. You came fast. Did you break traffic laws? Several, Cashin admitted. He looked at Isolde. Are you okay? I've had better days. He walked over to the coffee table and picked up the folder. His expression grew darker with each page he turned. She tried to buy you off. She succeeded last time. Or she thought she did. Cashin's jaw tightened. This ends now. Tonight. I'm not going to let her threaten you again. Cashin, she's your mother. And you're the mother of my child. That means something. That means everything. He closed the folder and set it aside. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. And I'm going to do something I should have done years ago. What? I'm going to cut her off. Completely. From the company. From my life. From any power she might have over us. Eloan looked up from her tablet. That's a significant decision. Are you sure you've considered all the variables? Cashin knelt down to her level. I've considered the only variable that matters, you. Both of you. I let my mother control my life for too long. I let her drive away the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Isolde felt tears prickling at her eyes. Cashin. He stood and turned to face her. For a moment, neither of them moved. The distance between them felt like both inches and miles. I know I can't undo the past, he said softly. I know I can't give you back the 7 years we lost. But I can promise you this. From this moment forward, I will protect you. Both of you with everything I have. With everything I am. Isolde wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that this time would be different. But the scars of the past were deep, and trust was not something that could be rebuilt in a single conversation. Actions speak louder than words, she said quietly. Cashin nodded. Then watch my actions. Starting tomorrow. The next morning, Cash and George walked into the George Industries boardroom and changed everything. The board members were already assembled when he arrived. 12 of the most powerful men and women in the tech industry, all looking at him with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. At the head of the table sat Cordelia George, her smile as sharp and cold as ever. Vivian Marchand was there too, sitting at Cordelia's right hand. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes tracked Cashin's every move. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Cashin began. I have an announcement to make. Several, actually. He looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. First, I want to introduce you to someone. My daughter, Eloan Winters. Some of you may have seen the news coverage. I want you to hear it from me directly. She is my child, my heir. And as of today, she is a legal beneficiary of my estate. Murmurs rippled around the table. Cordelia's smile flickered. Second, Cashin continued. I am calling off my engagement to Vivian Marchand. Vivian's composure finally cracked. What? I'm sorry, Vivian. You deserve someone who loves you. That person is not me. You can't do this. Vivian stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Your mother promised me. The merger, the alliance, everything was arranged. Arrangements made without my consent are not binding. Cashin's voice was calm but firm. I wish you well, but I won't marry someone to satisfy corporate strategy. Vivian looked to Cordelia for support. Cordelia said nothing. Third, Cashin said, turning to face his mother directly. I am removing Cordelia George from her position as chairman emeritus of this company. Effective immediately, the room went silent. Cordelia's smile vanished entirely. You don't have the authority. Actually, I do. I hold 51% of the voting shares. I've already filed the paperwork with our legal team. As of 9 a.m. this morning, you no longer have any official role in George Industries. This is preposterous. Cordelia rose to her feet, her composure finally shattering. I built this company. I made you who you are. You would be nothing without me. You're right, Cashin said quietly. You did build this company. And for years, I was grateful. But I have learned recently that the cost of your protection was too high. You drove away the woman I loved. You tried to erase my own daughter from existence. And you manipulated me for decades into believing that your way was the only way. He paused, letting the words settle. I'm done. I'm done being your puppet. I'm done letting you control who I love, who I trust, who I allow into my life. From this moment forward, I make my own choices. And my first choice is to protect my family. My real family. Cordelia stared at him with an expression Isolde would have given anything to see. Pure, unfiltered shock. You'll regret this, Cordelia whispered. Maybe, but I doubt it. Cashin turned to the rest of the board. That's all. Thank you for your time. And then he walked out. Isolde watched the news coverage from her living room later that evening. Every channel was running the story. George CEO ousts mother in dramatic boardroom coup. Billionaire cancels engagement, claims secret daughter. Aloan sat beside her, eating popcorn and providing commentary. His posture is very confident in this footage. He's made his decision and he's committed to it. That's a good sign. You're analyzing your own father's body language? I analyze everyone's body language. It's informative. The doorbell rang. Isolde's heart jumped into her throat. After Cordelia's visit, she was half expecting lawyers or process servers or some new form of attack. But when she opened the door, it was Cashin. He looked exhausted. His tie was loose. His hair was disheveled. But he was smiling. It's done, he said. She's out. The engagement is over. And the board voted unanimously to support my decisions. Isolde stared at him. You actually did it. I told you. Actions speak louder than words. Before she could respond, Aloan appeared beside her. You should come inside. Mom made pasta. There's enough for 3, and we should probably discuss next steps as a family unit. Cashin looked at Isolde. Is that okay? 7 years of walls, 7 years of fear, 7 years of protecting her heart from the man who had once broken it. But looking at him now, standing on her porch with hope in his eyes and their daughter beside her, Isolde felt something shift. Maybe it was time to stop running. Yeah, she said softly. Come in. Dinner was a strange affair. Cashin George, billionaire CEO and technological visionary, sat at Isolde's scratched wooden table eating homemade pasta from mismatched plates. He looked entirely out of place. And yet, somehow, he also looked like he belonged. Aloan dominated the conversation, peppering her father with questions about quantum computing, neural networks, and the feasibility of faster-than-light communication. Cashin answered each one thoughtfully, occasionally looking to Isolde with an expression of pure wonder. This is my daughter. This brilliant, impossible creature is mine. Isolde watched them from across the table, her heart doing complicated things she wasn't ready to examine. 7 years ago, she had imagined this moment, dreamed of it. A family dinner with the man she loved and the child they had created together. But dreams and reality were different animals entirely. Mom says you invented the George Protocol when you were 19, Aloan said between bites. That's only 12 years older than me. I should probably start working on my own breakthrough soon. There's no rush, Cashin replied. You have your whole life ahead of you. Statistically, the most productive years for theoretical innovation are between ages 20 and 35. I'm already behind schedule. Isolde shook her head. She's been like this since she could talk. Always in a hurry to grow up. I'm not in a hurry to grow up. I'm in a hurry to contribute meaningfully to human knowledge. Aloan paused. Those are different things. Cashin laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine and unguarded. Isolde realized she had never heard him laugh like that before, not even when they were married. You remind me of myself at your age, he said. I was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. It made me impatient, sometimes arrogant. I'm not arrogant. I'm accurate. That's exactly what I used to say. Aloan considered this. So arrogance might be genetic? Confidence is genetic. Arrogance is a choice. Cashin glanced at Isolde. Your mother taught me that. A long time ago. The look in his eyes made Isolde's breath catch. After dinner, Aloan retreated upstairs to work on what she called a minor recalibration of existing machine learning models. Cashin offered to help with the dishes, and Isolde found herself standing beside him at the sink, their shoulders almost touching. She's incredible, Cashin said softly. I know I keep saying it, but I can't get over it. She's everything I could have hoped for and more. She's had a lot of challenges. Being different, being smarter than everyone around her. Kids can be cruel to people they don't understand. Were you able to give her what she needed? Intellectually, I mean. Isolde rinsed a plate and handed it to him. I did my best. Found her tutors when I could afford them. Enrolled her in advanced programs. Let her teach herself when nothing else was available. She's remarkably self-sufficient. She had to be, because of me. Because I wasn't there. Cashin don't. It's true. If I had been stronger. If I had seen through my mother's lies sooner. You wouldn't have had to do this alone. Isolde set down the dish she was holding and turned to face him. He was so close. Close enough that she could see the tiny lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 7 years ago. Close enough to smell his cologne. The same scent he had always worn. The one that still haunted her dreams. You can't change the past, she said quietly. Neither of us can. All we can do is move forward. Is that what you want? To move forward? Together? The question hung between them. Isolde thought about all the nights she had spent crying into her pillow. All the mornings she had woken up reaching for someone who wasn't there. All the times she had looked at Aloan and seen Cashin's face staring back at her. I don't know what I want, she admitted. Everything is happening so fast. A week ago, my biggest problem was figuring out how to pay for Aloan's advanced chemistry supplies. Now I'm caught up in corporate warfare and custody threats, and me, you standing in my kitchen like the last 7 years didn't happen. You looking at me like what? Like you still love me. Like you never stopped. But she couldn't say that. Not yet, maybe not ever. It's complicated, she finished lamely. Cashin nodded slowly. I understand. I'm not trying to rush you. I just want you to know that I'm here. Whatever you need, whatever Aloan needs. I'm not going anywhere this time. Your mother won't give up easily. You know that. I know. But she doesn't have the power she used to. I've cut her off from the company. Her social influence is already crumbling. By this time next month, she'll be a footnote. You underestimate her. Cashin's expression hardened. Maybe, but she underestimates me too. She always has. They finished the dishes in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. The kind shared by people who had once known each other intimately and were slowly remembering how to exist in the same space. When Cashin left an hour later, Aloan came downstairs to say goodbye. She stood on the porch and studied him with those piercing gray eyes. Will you come back tomorrow? Cashin knelt down to her level. Do you want me to? Yes. I have more questions. And Mom smiles more when you're here. Her serotonin levels are clearly elevated. Isolde felt her face flush. Aloan, I'm just reporting observations. Cashin smiled and pressed a gentle kiss to his daughter's forehead. I'll be back tomorrow. I promise. And for the first time in 7 years, Isolde allowed herself to hope. If you're invested in this story, take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and there's so much more drama ahead. Trust me. The piece lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th morning, Isolde received a phone call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Winters. This is Patricia Vance from Child Protective Services. I'm calling to inform you that we've received a complaint regarding the welfare of your daughter, Aloan. We'll need to schedule a home visit within the next 48 hours. Isolde's blood turned to ice. A complaint? From whom? I'm not at liberty to disclose that information. However, the allegations include concerns about the child's educational environment and questions about your fitness as a primary caregiver. I understand this must be distressing, but I assure you this is standard procedure. There's nothing wrong with my daughter's environment. She's thriving. She's happy. I'm sure that's the case. The home visit will give you an opportunity to demonstrate that. Can we schedule for Thursday at 10 a.m.? Isolde wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the phone across the room, but she kept her voice steady. Thursday is fine. After hanging up, she immediately called Cashin. It's my mother, he said, his voice tight with fury. This is exactly her playbook. She can't attack you directly anymore, so she's going through official channels, making you look unstable, unfit. Can she do that? Can she actually take Aloan away from me? Not if I have anything to say about it. I'm calling my lawyers right now. We'll have representation at that home visit, and I'm going to find out exactly who filed that complaint. Cashin, I'm scared. The admission came out before she could stop it. Isolde Winters didn't get scared. She had survived poverty, betrayal, single motherhood, and 7 years of hiding from one of the most powerful families in the country. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. But this was different. This was her daughter. I know, Cashin said softly. But I've got you. Both of you. We're going to get through this. Thursday arrived with the weight of a death sentence. Isolde had spent the previous 2 days scrubbing every inch of the house, organizing Aloan's educational materials, and assembling documentation of her daughter's achievements. Report cards, test scores, letters from teachers, anything that proved she was a capable, devoted mother. Cashin arrived an hour before the scheduled visit with a woman in a sharp navy suit. This is Miranda Chun, one of the best family law attorneys in the state. She'll be present during the interview to ensure your rights are protected. Miranda shook Isolde's hand with a firm, reassuring grip. Try not to worry, Ms. Winters. CPS investigations like this are usually closed quickly when the allegations are unfounded. And from what Cashin has told me, your daughter is exceptionally well cared for. Thank you. I just want this to be over. The social worker arrived precisely at 10. Patricia Vance was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a clipboard that seemed to contain Isolde's entire future. The home visit was thorough. Patricia examined Aloan's room, asked questions about her daily routine, reviewed her academic records, and conducted a private interview with Aloan herself. That was the part that terrified Isolde most. Aloan was brilliant, but she was also blunt. She said exactly what she thought, without the social filters that most people developed. If Patricia asked the wrong question, Aloan might give an answer that sounded alarming to someone who didn't understand her. After 45 minutes, Patricia emerged from Aloan's room with an unreadable expression. Well, Patricia consulted her notes. Your daughter is remarkable. She explained her educational curriculum to me in detail, including the advanced courses she's taking and the research projects she's conducting independently. She also mentioned that she recently reconnected with her father and that she's happy about having both parents in her life. Isolde felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. She did express one concern, however. The tension returned with a vengeance. What concern? Patricia looked up from her clipboard. She said, and I quote, "My grandmother is a narcissistic sociopath who is attempting to destabilize my family unit through bureaucratic manipulation. You should investigate her instead of my mother." Silence. Cashin pressed his hand over his mouth. Miranda made a small choking sound. Patricia's lips twitched. She then provided me with a detailed psychological profile of Cordelia George, complete with citations from academic journals. Isolde didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That's my daughter. I can see that. Patricia closed her notebook. Ms. Winters, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know a loving home when I see one, and I know a malicious complaint when I encounter one. I'll be recommending that this case be closed with no further action. Thank you. Thank you so much. Patricia headed for the door, then paused. Off the record, your daughter also suggested that I look into the source of the complaint. She gave me some interesting leads. I may just follow up on them. After she left, Isolde collapsed onto the couch. Her hands were shaking. The adrenaline that had been keeping her upright for days was finally crashing. Cashin sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She didn't pull away. I told you we'd get through it. That was too close. I know, but it's over now. Is it? Your mother isn't going to stop. She'll find another way to come at us. Let her try? I'm ready for her. Aloan appeared at the top of the stairs. Is the investigation concluded? Yes, sweetheart. You did wonderfully. I provided factual information. I also may have given Ms. Vance access to some files regarding grandmother's historical behavior patterns. Nothing that isn't already public record, of course. Cashin looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and alarm. You hacked my mother's personal files. I prefer the term conducted independent research. Also, you should probably change your corporate security protocols. They were embarrassingly easy to bypass. Isolde started laughing. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of everything, the terror and relief and the sheer audacity of her 7-year-old daughter, all of it came pouring out in waves of slightly hysterical laughter. Cashin joined her, and for a moment, despite everything, they felt like a family. But Cordelia George was not finished. The second attack came a week later, and this time it wasn't aimed at Isolde. It was aimed at Cashin. The headline broke at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. George Industries stock plummets as investors question CEO's judgment. Isolde saw it first, on her phone while making coffee. She read the article with growing horror. According to anonymous sources, Cashin George's recent personal decisions have raised serious concerns among major stakeholders. The CEO's abrupt cancellation of his engagement to Vivian Marchand, a strategic alliance that would have secured billions in merger opportunities, has been characterized by some as erratic and impulsive. Additionally, the revelation of a secret child and the very public ouster of his own mother from the company board have led to questions about George's emotional stability and fitness to lead. Several institutional investors are reportedly considering pulling their support, and the company's stock price has already dropped 15% in pre-market trading. When reached for comment, Cordelia George expressed deep concern for her son's well-being. "I love Cashin," she said, "but I fear he's being manipulated by individuals who do not have his best interests at heart. I only want what's best for him and for the company we built together." Isolde felt sick. She called Cashin immediately. "I've seen it," he said. His voice was strained, exhausted. "I've been on damage control calls since midnight. She's trying to destroy you. She's trying to force me to choose the company or you. She thinks if she puts enough pressure on me, I'll cave. I'll come crawling back and beg her forgiveness. Will you?" The question came out sharper than she intended. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Cashin spoke again, his voice was quiet but firm. "No, never. I made my choice. I'm not going back on it. Cashin, I never wanted to cost you everything. You're not costing me anything. She is. She's the one who decided to burn it all down rather than accept that I'm not her puppet anymore." He took a breath. "I have a board meeting in an hour. Some of the directors are demanding my resignation. I need to be there. What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to. I'll call you when it's over." He hung up. Isolde stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done in 7 years. She prayed. The board meeting was a bloodbath. Cashin walked into the George Industries executive conference room to find 12 hostile faces waiting for him. His mother sat at the far end of the table, her expression serene. Victorious. She had orchestrated this perfectly, whispered in the right ears, made the right promises, turned his own board against him. Cashin, Harrison Wells, the longest-serving director, spoke first. "I think you know why we've called this meeting. I have some idea. The company is in crisis. Stock is down 20% since your personal revelations. Investors are panicking. The Marchand merger is dead. And frankly, your behavior over the past few weeks has raised serious questions about your judgment." Cashin remained standing. "My behavior has been entirely consistent with my values. I discovered I have a daughter. I acknowledged her. I removed a toxic influence from my life and from this company. I fail to see how any of that reflects poor judgment. You humiliated Vivian Marchand in front of the entire board. I ended an engagement I never should have agreed to in the first place. Vivian will recover. She'll find someone who actually loves her, which is more than she would have gotten from me. You removed your own mother from her position, a position she was using to manipulate and control me, to threaten the mother of my child, to file false reports with Child Protective Services in an attempt to steal my daughter." Cashin let that sink in. "Yes, I know about that. I have documentation, and I'm prepared to share it with the press if necessary." Cordelia's smile flickered. "The point," Harrison continued, "is that confidence in your leadership has been severely damaged. Several of us believe it would be in the company's best interest for you to step down, at least temporarily, until things stabilize." Cashin looked around the room. He had built this company from nothing. He had poured his blood and sweat and genius into every product, every innovation, every breakthrough. And now they wanted to take it from him because he had chosen his family over their bottom line. "Let me be clear," he said. "I am not resigning. I am not stepping down. I am not giving my mother control of this company, which is obviously what this meeting is really about." "Cashin," Cordelia said sweetly, "no one is suggesting I take control. I simply want what's best for you. For all of us. Perhaps a leave of absence would give you time to sort out your personal affairs. My personal affairs are sorted. I have a daughter I'm getting to know. I have a co-parent I'm rebuilding trust with. And I have a mother who has spent decades manipulating everyone around her to maintain her grip on power." He turned to face her directly. "It ends now. You're being emotional. I'm being honest. Something this family has been allergic to for far too long." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and laid it on the table. "This is a complete record of every underhanded thing you've done in the past 20 years, Mother. The bribes, the intimidation, the false accusations, the payoffs to make problems disappear. I've had investigators working on this for the past 2 weeks. It's thorough." Cordelia's face went pale. "If this board votes to remove me, I will release every document in this folder to the press. I will expose you for what you really are. And I will take this company down with me if I have to, because I would rather watch it burn than see it in your hands again." Silence. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Harrison cleared his throat. That's quite a threat. It's not a threat. It's a promise. I built this company. I can destroy it. And I will, if you force me to choose between my integrity and my legacy. He looked around the room one final time. So, shall we vote? The vote was 6-6. A tie. Harrison, as the senior director, had the deciding vote. He looked at Cashin, then at Cordelia, then at the folder sitting on the table between them. I've known you your whole life, Cashin. I watched you grow up. I watched you build this company into something extraordinary. And I've also watched your mother control you, manipulate you, and undermine you at every turn. Cordelia's eyes narrowed. I don't know what's in that folder, but I know enough about Cordelia George to believe it's probably true. Harrison took a breath. I vote to retain Cashin as CEO, and I move that Cordelia George be permanently banned from all company premises and stripped of any remaining advisory roles. Cordelia shot to her feet. You can't do this. It's done, Harrison said quietly. I'm sorry, Cordelia, but it's time for you to let go. Security escorted Cordelia George from the building 20 minutes later. Cashin watched from his office window as she was guided into a waiting car. She looked up once, her eyes finding his across the distance. The hatred in her gaze was palpable, but so was the defeat. His phone buzzed. A message from Isolde. I saw the news. Stock is recovering. Are you okay? He typed back. I'm okay, it's over. She's gone. A moment later. Come home. Aloan made you a congratulations card. It has equations on it. Home. The words settled into his chest like a warm ember. He had never really had a home. Not really. The mansion he grew up in was a showpiece, cold and empty. His penthouse apartment was a place to sleep between meetings. But that little townhouse with the creaky stairs and the overflowing bookshelves and the two people waiting inside it. That was home. I'm on my way, he typed. Okay, I need you to hit pause for just a second. If you've made it this far into the story, you're clearly invested. So do me a favor and drop a comment telling me what you think should happen next. Should Cashin and Isolde get back together? Would Cordelia try one more scheme? Let me know. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. The best part is still coming. The weeks that followed were the happiest Isolde had experienced in years. With Cordelia neutralized, the constant threat that had loomed over them began to fade. The CPS case was officially closed. The media frenzy died down. And slowly, carefully, they began to build a life together. Cashin came over for dinner almost every night. He helped Aloan with her advanced projects, debated theoretical physics with her until midnight, and taught her the finer points of corporate strategy in case she ever wanted to run her own empire. He also started attending her school events, parent-teacher conferences, science fairs, the academic decathlon where Aloan single-handedly carried her team to a regional championship. Your father was beaming the entire time, Isolde told Aloan after the decathlon. I've never seen him so proud. He should be. I answered 94% of the questions correctly. The remaining 6% were poorly worded and open to interpretation. Of course they were. Cashin and Isolde also found themselves spending more time alone. After Aloan went to bed, they would sit on the porch with glasses of wine, talking about everything and nothing. Their past, their regrets, their hopes for the future. It was during one of these conversations that Cashin finally asked the question that had been hanging between them for weeks. Do you think you could ever forgive me? Really forgive me? For not protecting you? For not being there? Isolde stared into her wine glass. The autumn air was cool, and she had wrapped herself in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender. I've been asking myself the same thing. And she looked up at him. His face was illuminated by the soft glow from the living room window. He looked younger somehow, more open. The armor he wore in the world had been stripped away, leaving only the man beneath. I think forgiveness isn't a single moment, she said slowly. It's a process. Every day, I wake up and I choose whether to hold on to the hurt or let it go. Some days are easier than others. And today is a good day. Cashin reached over and took her hand. The touch was gentle, tentative, as if he was afraid she might pull away. She didn't. I'm not asking you to forget what happened, he said. I'm not asking you to pretend everything is fine. I just want a chance. A real chance to be the man I should have been. The partner you deserved. Isolde felt tears prickling at her eyes. Cashin, I love you, Isolde. I never stopped. Even when I thought you had left me. Even when I convinced myself to move on. There was always this part of me that was waiting. Hoping. And now that you're here, now that Aloan is here, I don't want to waste another day. The words washed over her like a wave. For 7 years, she had protected her heart, built walls so high that no one could reach her, told herself that love was a luxury she couldn't afford, a weakness she couldn't indulge. But sitting here, with his hand in hers and the stars overhead, she realized something. The walls hadn't protected her. They had imprisoned her. "I love you too," she whispered. "I never stopped either." Cashin's breath caught. "You do? Why do you think I ran so far? Why do you think I hid so completely?" "Because losing you broke me. And I was terrified that if I let you back in, you would break me again." "I won't. I swear to you, Isolde. I will spend the rest of my life proving that you can trust me." "I know. I believe you." She squeezed his hand. "But we need to take this slow. For Alohan's sake. For our sake. We have 7 years to make up for, and I don't want to rush it." "Slow is fine. Slow is perfect. I would wait 100 years for you." She laughed softly. "Let's start with dinner tomorrow. We can work up from there." He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "It's a date." The transition wasn't always smooth. There were arguments, misunderstandings, moments when the ghosts of the past reared their heads and threatened to tear them apart. Cashin struggled with guilt. He would look at photographs of Alohan as a baby, as a toddler, as a little girl taking her first steps, and his face would crumble. "I missed everything," he said one night, holding a picture of Alohan at age 3, dressed as a tiny scientist for Halloween. Her first words, her first day of school, every milestone. "You're here for the milestones that matter," Isolde reminded him. Her first boyfriend, her first heartbreak, her first world-changing invention. "She's 7, and already smarter than both of us combined. I give it 5 years before she solves cold fusion." That earned a small smile. Isolde had her own struggles. After 7 years of doing everything alone, she found it difficult to accept help, to share the burden, to let Cashin into the daily routines she had built without him. "You don't have to do everything yourself anymore," he told her one evening, after she had insisted on handling a school crisis without his input. "I'm here. Let me carry some of the weight. I'm not used to relying on anyone." "I know, but you can rely on me. I want you to." It took time, patience, a willingness to stumble and get back up again. But slowly, day by day, they began to heal. Alohan, for her part, adapted to her new reality with remarkable ease. She had always craved intellectual stimulation, and having a father who could match her question for question was a gift she hadn't known she needed. She also took on the role of unofficial family therapist, offering observations and advice with the clinical detachment of a seasoned counselor. "Your communication styles are incompatible," she announced one morning over breakfast. "Dad speaks in data and logic. Mom speaks in emotion and intuition. You need to develop a shared vocabulary." Cashin and Isolde exchanged glances. "She's not wrong," Isolde admitted. "She's never wrong," Cashin replied. "It's slightly terrifying." "I prefer the term consistently accurate," Alohan said, buttering her toast. 6 months later, they moved into a new house together. It wasn't the George family mansion, thank goodness. Cashin had sold that property the moment his mother was removed from the company, donating the proceeds to a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. Instead, they found a sprawling old farmhouse on the outskirts of the city. It had a massive backyard for Alohan to conduct outdoor experiments, a library that made Isolde's heart sing, and enough space for all of them to have their own corners while still feeling connected. "It needs work," Cashin said as they stood in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through dusty windows. "It needs love," Isolde corrected. "There's a difference." Alohan ran in from the backyard, her shoes covered in mud. "There's a barn. Can I turn it into a laboratory? Please? I promise I won't create anything that violates international safety regulations." "We'll discuss it," Isolde said, which they all knew meant yes. Cashin wrapped an arm around Isolde's waist and pulled her close. "Are you happy?" She looked around at the peeling wallpaper, the creaky floors, the cobwebs in the corners. Then she looked at her daughter, already sketching plans for her future laboratory. And finally, she looked at the man beside her, the man who had broken her heart and then spent every day since trying to put it back together. "Yes," she said, "I'm happy. But happiness, like all precious things, must sometimes be defended." The final attack came on a bright spring morning, exactly 1 year after Alohan's malpractice accusation had set everything in motion. Isolde was in the garden, planting roses, when a car pulled into the driveway. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows. The kind of car that meant lawyers or worse. A woman stepped out. Not Cordelia, someone younger. More polished. Vivian Marchand. Isolde stood slowly, wiping the dirt from her hands. Vivian. This is unexpected. The blonde woman walked toward her with the measured steps of someone approaching a negotiation. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I needed to speak with you. Privately. Before Cashin finds out I'm here. Why would you need to speak with me? Vivian stopped a few feet away. Up close, she looked different than she had that day in Cashin's office. Softer, more vulnerable. The mask of perfect composure had slipped, revealing something almost human beneath. I came to warn you. Isolde's guard went up immediately. Warn me about what? Cordelia. She's not done. I know everyone thinks she's been defeated, that she's retreated to her vineyard in Napa and accepted her exile. But I know her better than that. She raised me to be Cashin's wife. She groomed me for years. I know how she thinks. And how does she think? Vivian's expression darkened. She plays the long game. She waits, she watches. And when you finally let your guard down, when you think you're safe, she strikes. A chill ran down Isolde's spine despite the warm sun. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm not like her. Vivian's voice cracked slightly. She used me. She promised me a future with Cashin, and I believed her. I thought if I was perfect enough, polished enough, I could earn my way into his heart. But his heart was never available. It always belonged to you. Isolde didn't know what to say. I was angry at first, Vivian continued. When he called off the engagement. When everything fell apart. I wanted to blame you. But then I realized the truth. I was never competing with you. I was competing with a memory. A love that neither time nor distance could erase. Vivian, I don't want your pity. I want to help. Because Cordelia made me a part of her plans, and that means I know things. Things that could hurt you. Or protect you. What kind of things? Vivian reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. Everything. Her offshore accounts. Her communications with board members who are still loyal to her. Her plans for a proxy war to regain control of George Industries. It's all here. Isolde stared at the flash drive. Why would you give this to me? Because I want to be free. Of her. Of this whole twisted world. And the only way to be free is to make sure she can never hurt anyone again. Vivian pressed the drive into Isolde's hand. Give this to Cashin. Let him end it. For good. She turned to leave. Vivian. Wait. The woman paused. Thank you. Vivian looked back over her shoulder. For a moment, something like gratitude flickered in her eyes. Be happy, Isolde. You deserve it. And then she was gone. Cashin reviewed the flash drive's contents that night. His face grew darker with each file. Each email. Each recorded conversation. She was planning a hostile takeover, he said quietly. Working with a consortium of investors I thought were loyal. Setting up shell companies to buy shares under the radar. If Vivian hadn't given us this, she would have had controlling interest within 6 months. Can you stop her? I can do better than stop her. He closed the laptop and looked at Isolde. I can destroy her. Completely. Not physically, but financially, socially. Every weapon she's ever wielded against us, I can turn back on her. Is that what you want? Cashin was quiet for a long moment. What I want is for her to leave us alone. For Eloan to grow up without this shadow hanging over her. For us to live our lives without constantly looking over our shoulders. Then do what you have to do. He nodded slowly. It won't be pretty. There will be lawsuits, criminal investigations, public scandal. The George name will be dragged through the mud. The George name is just a name. Our family is what matters. Protect that, and let the name take care of itself. Cashin reached for her hand. Have I told you lately that I love you? Only about 3 times today. You're slipping. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. I love you. I love Eloan. I love this crazy, imperfect, beautiful life we're building together. And I will protect it with everything I have. I know you will. The takedown of Cordelia George took 3 months. First came the financial assault. Cashin's team traced the shell companies, exposed the hidden transactions, and alerted the SEC to potential securities fraud. Cordelia's assets were frozen pending investigation. Then came the social collapse. The evidence Vivian had provided included recordings of Cordelia threatening, bribing, and blackmailing some of the most prominent names in society. Once those recordings became public, every door that had once been opened to her slammed shut. Finally came the legal reckoning. The false CPS report was traced back to a private investigator on Cordelia's payroll. The investigator flipped, providing testimony in exchange for immunity. Cordelia was charged with filing false reports, harassment, and conspiracy. She pleaded guilty to avoid a trial. The sentence was 3 years of probation, a permanent restraining order, and a fine large enough to force her to sell her Napa vineyard. Cashin watched the news coverage from his home office, Isolde beside him. "It's over," he said quietly. "It's finally over. Do you feel any different?" He considered the question. "I feel lighter. Like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying has been lifted." "Good." Isolde rested her head on his shoulder. "You deserve to feel light." Aloan appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "I've been monitoring the news coverage. Public sentiment is overwhelmingly positive. Your approval ratings have increased by 23% since the story broke. Also, I've completed the schematics for my new laboratory. Would you like to review them?" Cashin smiled. "I would love to review them." As their daughter launched into a detailed explanation of her plans, complete with holographic projections and projected timelines, Isolde felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was what she had been fighting for. Not just survival, not just protection, but joy, connection. A future she could look forward to instead of running from. "Mom, are you crying?" Isolde wiped her eyes quickly. "No, just allergies. The pollen count is actually quite low today. I checked. Fine. I'm crying. But they're happy tears." Aloan considered this. "Happy tears are acceptable. I'll allow it." Cashin laughed and pulled both of them into a hug. "I love you both. More than words can say." "Love is a complex neurochemical response," Aloan said, her voice muffled against his chest. "But I think I love you too." "You think?" "I'm still gathering data. But preliminary results are promising." Isolde laughed through her tears. They had been through fire, through heartbreak and betrayal and years of separation. But they had found their way back to each other. And this time, nothing would tear them apart. 1 year later, Cashin and Isolde stood on the beach at sunset, surrounded by their closest friends and family. The wedding was small, intimate. Nothing like the grand spectacle Cordelia would have demanded. Aloan served as the ring bearer and the flower girl and the unofficial wedding coordinator, having created a detailed timeline and contingency plan for every possible scenario. "If it rains, we move to backup location Alpha," she had explained during the rehearsal. "If the caterer is late, I've pre-negotiated with 3 alternative vendors. If Uncle Marcus gets drunk and tries to give an embarrassing speech, I've prepared a distraction protocol." "You've thought of everything," Isolde said. "I always do." But the day was perfect. Not a cloud in the sky. The caterer arrived early, and Uncle Marcus, while enthusiastic, kept his speech mercifully brief. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Cashin took Isolde's hands in his. "I, Cashin, take you, Isolde, to be my wife. I promise to love you in the good times and the bad, to support your dreams and share in your burdens, to be your partner in all things from this day forward." Isolde's voice trembled as she spoke her vows. "I, Isolde, take you, Cashin, to be my husband. I promise to trust you, even when I'm afraid, to let you in, even when it's hard, to build a life with you that's bigger and brighter than anything I could build alone. By the power vested in me," the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Cashin pulled Isolde close and kissed her as if they were the only 2 people in the world. Their guests cheered. The waves crashed gently against the shore. And somewhere in the crowd, Aloan was probably taking notes on the whole experience. Later that night, as the reception wound down and the stars emerged overhead, Isolde found a quiet moment alone with her daughter. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" Aloan looked up from the equation she was solving on a napkin. "I have both parents, a stable home environment, access to advanced educational resources, and a laboratory that's almost finished." She paused. "Yes, I believe I'm happy." "Good. That's all I've ever wanted for you." "I know." Aloan hesitated, then added, "Thank you for protecting me, for giving up everything to keep me safe. I know it wasn't easy." Isolde felt her heart crack open. "It was the easiest decision I ever made." Aloan stood and wrapped her arms around her mother. It was an unusual gesture for her. Physical affection wasn't typically her language. But sometimes, even the most logical minds need to say what numbers cannot. "I love you, Mom." Isolde held her daughter tight. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything in the world." The farmhouse was quiet now. The wedding guests had gone home. The decorations had been taken down. The last traces of celebration had been swept away. Isolde stood on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the first light of dawn creep across the sky. She heard the screen door open and felt Cashin's arms wrap around her from behind. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." "Too happy." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I know the feeling." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the world wake up. "No regrets?" Cashin asked softly. Isolde thought about everything they had been through. The pain, the separation, the years of loneliness, the battles fought and won. "Not one," she said. "Every step led me here. To you, to Aloan, to this life. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. They made us who we are." Cashin turned her in his arms so they were facing each other. "I spent so many years building an empire, chasing success, trying to prove myself to a mother who was incapable of love. And in the end, none of it mattered. The only thing that matters is this. Us, our family. Your mother taught you what not to be. That's not nothing." "No, I suppose it isn't." A noise from inside the house made them both turn. Aloan appeared in the doorway, her hair a wild tangle, her pajamas covered in what looked like scorch marks. "Minor incident in the laboratory. Nothing to worry about. The fire is out." The fire. It was a very small fire, and it proved my hypothesis about exothermic reactions under controlled conditions. So technically a success. Cashin looked at Isolde. Isolde looked at Cashin. They both started laughing. This was their life now. Beautiful, chaotic, filled with love and small fires and a daughter who was going to change the world. And they wouldn't have it any other way. The new algorithm wasn't a piece of code. It wasn't a mathematical formula or a technological breakthrough. It was a family. 3 people, bound together by blood and choice and a love that had survived everything the world had thrown at it. Isolde had spent 7 years running from her past. Cashin had spent 7 years trapped by his. But in finding each other again, they had created something new, something stronger. A future built not on fear or ambition or the expectations of others, but on trust, honesty, and the simple, profound commitment to show up for each other every single day. Aloan would go on to do extraordinary things. By age 12, she had filed her first patent. By 16, she had published a paper that revolutionized quantum computing. By 21, she had founded her own company, built on the principles her parents had taught her, innovation tempered by ethics, ambition grounded in humanity. But through it all, she remained the same fierce, brilliant, slightly terrifying girl who had once told a social worker that her grandmother was a narcissistic sociopath. Some things never change. Cashin rebuilt George Industries into a company his mother wouldn't recognize. Kinder. More sustainable. More focused on making a difference than making a profit. He never forgot the lessons he had learned, and he never stopped trying to be worthy of the family he had almost lost. And Isolde? She went back to research. Published the papers she had been too afraid to write. Made discoveries that earned her the recognition she had always deserved. But her greatest accomplishment, she would always say, wasn't in any laboratory. It was in the faces of the people she loved. On quiet evenings, when the world felt far away and the farmhouse glowed with warmth, the 3 of them would gather in the living room. Cashin would play piano, a skill he had hidden for years because his mother thought it was frivolous. Aloan would read aloud from whatever book had captured her attention that week. And Isolde would sit in her favorite chair, watching her family, her heart so full it ached. These were the moments that mattered. Not the headlines, or the accolades, or the battles won. Just this. Just them. Just love. And that's where our story ends. Not with a grand gesture or a dramatic confrontation, but with a family finally whole, finally at peace, finally home. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Stories like this remind us that second chances are possible, that families can be rebuilt, that love, real love, is worth fighting for. And remember, no matter what challenges you're facing, no matter how lost you might feel, your story isn't over yet. The best chapters might still be ahead. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment telling me your favorite part. I read every single one. Until next time, this is Love Tales by Mr. Grayson, reminding you that the greatest stories are the ones we live. The end.